Hey everybody, Jason Bermas here, and this story basically has it all and should spell out to people that many of these politicians are nothing more than criminals and gangsters that represent a system of corruption that is generational, and they are just a small part of the quote-unquote deep state or swamp and extensions of how the military-industrial complex really works and how organized crime itself is utilized in the vast majority of this. I mean, you can go all the way back to the Lansky days, okay, and understand that a lot of these organizations, the FBI, the CIA, were what? Utilizing organized crime. That being said, we're going to touch upon a story where the FBI actually busted, are you ready for this, 7 members of Congress and a senator, amongst others, in what is known as the Scam scandal. Now, the Scam scandal is also very, very interesting because it is later fictionalized in the film American Hustle, a film I actually really liked. I remember that. I haven't seen it in a very long time. Now, here's the thing. That scandal happens late 70s, early 80s. The media wants you to believe things like there's no such thing as election fraud, or they make up talking points that are Bernaysian in nature by saying widespread election fraud or widespread voter fraud. And we're no longer allowed to question these things, despite the fact that Ozzie Myers, Michael J. Myers, okay, who was caught up hands down in this Scam scandal all the way back in the day, was helping rig elections in Pennsylvania between 2014 and 2018, according to said indictments. And it involved old school methods of what? Bribery, okay? Remember that? Old bribery? People do things for money and power, okay? Stuffing the ballot boxes, having insiders, getting judges elected. Oh, this is all happening? Wait, I thought that this was all fictitious unless it was the Ruskies. I thought we had eliminated this. I thought that we had election integrity in this country. And the funny thing is that these things were happening via Democratic candidates in Pennsylvania. And there's been pretty much either a media blackout or at the very beginning they just decried it and underreported it. Pennsylvania court declares expansive mail-in voting law unconstitutional. It wasn't a law. It was never a law. They were mandates. Okay, there were mandates of bullshit. And they've been ruled unconstitutional. But they just say appeal now. Appeal. Before we read down the line, and Myers is 79. He's been at this game for a very, very long time. Before being a regular congressman, he served in the House in the state he was there. So, in other words, a state congressman as well, not just a big representative. But when you look at this, Jersey Hustle, the real American story of Scam. And basically, the real deal is Abdul Industries. All right, you can go to FBI.gov, their own history. All right, on February 2nd, 1980, the world learned our high-level investigation into public corruption and organized crime in famously codenamed Scam. And they were doing payoffs to the tune of $50K, so that they could get zoning rights, or they wanted to open up casinos, allegedly. All right, and you look at this thing. I want to go down the line and just show you some of the people that were involved. Scott Harrison, Williams Jr., was one of the 7 members of Congress indicted and convicted in the scandal. Okay? You also had former Representative John W. Jenneret, another Democrat. You had Richard Kelly, a Republican out of Florida. See, this is why it's really important. This corruption is everywhere. It doesn't matter if it's Democrat or Republican. All right? But at the same time, they maintain that illusion. They have their own little cartels in a lot of ways. Representative Frank J. Thompson, Jr., Democrat. There's Michael J. Myers, a.k.a. Ozzie Myers, Democrat of Pennsylvania. Okay? He's been in the crime syndicate, okay, for quite some time. Has quite the connections. Raymond F. Lederer, Democrat out of Pennsylvania, couple Pennsylvania boys. Jack M. Murphy, New York. Okay? So you look at this, and now you see what they're up to here. Let me just read you some of this. A former Democratic congressman from Philadelphia pled guilty Monday to fraudulently stuffing ballot boxes for Democratic candidates and allegedly bribing judges across multiple elections. Wait a minute. He wasn't a tool of Putin? This just doesn't make any sense. I figured he must be a tool of the Poot. Okay? Now, they always want to emphasize it didn't involve the 2020 election. It didn't involve the 2020 election. Frankly, I don't give a damn. I just want people to understand that this is the real deal, that bribes actually happen, that these are career criminals. Just because they wear a suit and they act in a certain manner and they're called sir, I don't care. This is a criminal cartel. All right? And he admitted to bribing elections judge Dominic DeMuro as part of a voter fraud scheme. DeMuro was charged separately and pled guilty in May of 2020. He was convicted for the role of accepting to cast fraudulent ballots and certify false voting results for payments between $300 and $5,000. So he had people on the inside that would stuff the ballots for him, that would report to him so they would know the varying degrees to stuff them. And then he would also have people to bribe to certify the elections as if they were not fraudulent. Wow. Wow. Prosecutor said Myers conspired with another elections judge to tell voters on election days which candidates they should vote for. Wow. Candidates that Myers had selected, and the now former judge cast fraudulent votes for people who did not appear at the polls. Oh, so they voted for people that weren't there. That never happens unless Putin's at the helm. The old Pootster. Starting to get this? See why this is important? Right? This should be national news all over. Can you imagine if this was on the other side? And not only just, they'd want to keep it, I would say, they'd want to keep it quiet if it was a Republican, but it had happened pre-Trump or he wasn't involved with Trump. But if any way, shape, or form they could pin it on Trump, it would be about white supremacy and the Republican Party destroying democracy. Give me a break. And I promise you, folks, these things are way, way, way more commonplace than they allude to. This one's going to be a short one. Just some quick info for everybody. Everybody can check up on the details, but they're pretty stark. I would encourage you to check out American Hustle. It's a very good fictionalized film. Very enjoyable. Of course, it does not go anywhere nearly as far as just what we just read in those small excerpts of this scandal. So remember, we are on Rumble. We are on Podbean. We rock Finnan right now because we never know when we're going to get kicked off of YouTube. We're fully demonetized here on YouTube. But before we get to that, I do want you to check out all the documentary films which are in the playlist section. Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, and Shade the Motion Picture are all free. I encourage you to share them with others. And, of course, check me out on the alternative platforms. But you want to financially support me, consider buying me a coffee, $5, $10, $15. It means the world to me. It's easy to do, and it supports this broadcast. Guys, clearly not about left or right. It's about a corrupt predator class that runs the system and will no longer even allow us to question elections or their mechanisms, even though we know in this westernized world they are indeed corrupt at the highest levels in many cases, and they just go, hush, Putin propaganda. I love you guys. It's not about left or right. It's always about right and wrong, and I will see you on the flip side.